Bitsy Loo-hoo, how are you? Hey, Teddy, how are you, darling? Bitsy, got your toys ready? I was reading a little bit of. Hey, Ori. I was reading a little bit of the book tonight to Ori. Big Daddy walked in, heard me reading. He's like, "You two need to hurry up and get together." I'm like, "But it's not what you think." That was funny. I was like, "Yeah, it's not what you think, Big Daddy." Get here where I can see everybody. How is everybody? Yay! Oh no, Teddy, what'd you do to your foot? Did you break it? You ain't got time to be hurting your foot, Bubba. You gotta work. It's gonna be a long, cold winter. You need to be working. Just keep opening my mouth in front of you guys. I'm sorry. Hey, Victoria, you made it. You didn't get lost. Yay! Oh, those hurt. Chihuahua, as the minions say. Out Chihuahua. Isn't it the minions that say that? Somebody says that. Ooh, are you in the UK? Where are you at, Victoria? That sounds about like UK time there. From recent. Is Ray going to be able to make it? I hope. Yay! Anarchy, I am assuming you are my author. Yeah, I thought so. All righty. Yay, another minute. All right, now then, for those that are new to here, since we've got a couple of new ones, we ladies and the men just do whatever they need to do, because I'm not a man, don't know what you all you need, but we have what we call hot flash kits that sometimes are needed on some of these books that get rather hot, if you know what I mean. So, in the hot flash kit includes wine or your beverage preference. Mine happens to be water tonight. Because I have wine. Then you need a fan, which it's I got a blanket on right now, so I'll just start unraveling. But usually a fan. You may need a spritzer bottle. Again, I'm kind of on the cold side. You may need, and the most important thing is you might need chocolate. I had M&Ms earlier, but I've already eaten them all. So the other thing you may need are some utensils. So I brought a few of my goodies in here. So if anybody needs to borrow one during the read, just let me know. So that's what we call a hot flash kit. So as we're doing these, we're like, ladies, you might want to bring your hot flash kit in because it's going to be one of them nights. And Ray, just so you know, I am from Georgia, and I read it in a Georgia accent. So I hope and pray you don't expect this to be in some kind of New York accent or something, because, darling, I can't do it. These ladies will tell you, that it gets kind of hilarious when I start doing accents. Now I can do voices really well. I just can't do accent. Well, I can do really well, just varies. But I can't do accents too well. So if I keep looking over here at my phone, I've got my daddy on here on the texting me about his insurance. So my apologies. I think we got everything squared away, but you never know what else he's gonna come up with. So, all right. And did you have to pick one of the hardest words in the English language? See, I can't even speak today. English language for me to speak. The name in this book is Promiscuity and Success. God, I hope I did that good. And it's the book 1 in the Chronicles of Merisa Lopez. And this was geared after, it's by Ray Sostre. You just don't know. I have problems getting words out of my mouth sometimes, and I'm just like, but this is dedicated to an adult film star that the author was a fan of, Merisa Arroyo. As you left the industry and went on to start a new journey, I hope your life has found happiness. So this was kind of the idea was taken from that. Sostre. Okay. So, part 1, October 11th, 2013. Merisa Lopez sat anxiously in a dark room on top of a long black table wearing her sexiest outfit. She wore only a pair of black nylon stockings with matching garter straps that connected to her purple garter belt, paired with a lacy purple bra that made her feel sexy all over. She was alone as she watched a group of naked men entering the room. Vincy, calm down. Where is Olivia. That's who we're missing. And Jackie. She couldn't see their faces, but she was intrigued by them. There had to be at least 10 or 15 men. She was surrounded by them, and despite the heat coming from their bodies, Merisa felt warm with a wanton feeling. The men were stroking themselves in front of her. All she could think of was, oh, yes. She was going to have lots of fun, and the men were looking for the same thing. Then the men moved aside when a beautiful figure with long dark hair, beautiful fair skin, and sophisticated features walked in the room. It was her longtime friend, Nina Courtright. I'm sorry, Adela Giovanni. I did that to Nina earlier. By the way, Ori is Nina, so in case you guys haven't figured that out. I did that earlier when I was reading this part to Nina. I replaced her name with Adela's. It was her longtime friend, Adela Giovanni. The way she sauntered past the men clearly indicated that they held respect for her. Even the most brutal looking man stood aside for her. She was their goddess, and what she wore enhanced her beautiful goddess like appearance. She had on a teal corset with garter straps that connected to her black Chantilly lace stockings, and Marissa's noticed something very unique around her neck, a black choker with an emerald hanging just above her cleavage. The outfit accentuated her features aside from wrapping sensuously around her curves. Marissa stood up and grinned when Adela approached her. Adela had beautiful brown eyes, almond shaped, very captivating. She grinned back at her when she placed her hands on her shoulder. Just like old times, Adela said to her. Only better, Marissa responded. Adela didn't say another word, but her grin widened when she leaned in to kiss her. Marissa's lips were pressed tightly against hers as they opened their mouths to explore more of each other. Soon their kiss morphed into something lustful. She felt the slip of Adela's tongue inside her mouth, swirling against hers before she heard an alarming sound. It was a beeping noise, something awfully annoying. Marissa was jolted and turned her head away to see what it was, but Adela didn't seem to care. She continued to kiss the side of her neck, and the men began to move in, filling their hands with her body. She looked at Adela when she felt her bra clip being separated in front of her, and her breast fell free. Marissa wanted to say something, but Adela silenced her by placing her finger over her lips, shaking her head softly. Just ignore that. We're going to have the time of our lives. But it was too late. Marissa had awoken from her sleep. The buzzing noise she heard was her alarm clock going off in her bedroom. It was 6:30 in the morning. Marissa had been dreaming. She turned her aside and hit the alarm button. She lay back down in bed, frustrated that her sleep had been interrupted. She'd been enjoying a wonderful dream, but she couldn't shake off the meaning of it, especially when her friend mentioned just like old times. The dream was all too vivid, and in a way, it left her feeling both hot and bothered and jaded. She hadn't seen Adela in so many years. Hey, Heather. She lay in bed in the middle of the darkness, trying to make sense of her dream. The last time she had spoken to her friend, Adela, was over the last time she had spoken to her friend Adela over the phone and on face and was over the phone and on Facebook a few weeks ago. However, the two hadn't hung out in a decade. since they were in high school. Both she and Adela had moved on after graduation, but she remembered the wonderful memories they had made together. She turned to her nightstand and turned on the light. Her eyes squinted from the sudden brightness in her bedroom. She needed time for her eyes to adjust, and as much as she wanted to go back to bed and relive the moment in her dream, she couldn't. There, I had hair or something on my face. Uh, she had to get up and go to work. It wasn't a. It was. It's. It was a good thing. It was a good thing it was Friday. She was looking forward to some rest and relaxation over the weekend, and she had Columbus Day off, which was a good thing. She gave herself a nice big stretch before getting out of bed. Merisa heard her phone buzz on the nightstand. She looked at her screen, wondering who was calling her. It was her boyfriend, Joaquin. He never called her this early in the morning, usually just when she was riding the subway or on her lunch break. She slid her fingers across the screen and took the call. She answered in a raspy voice. Hello? Joaquin, on the other line, sounded happy and perky. Not the kind of voice Merisa wanted to hear this early. Good morning, beautiful. I hope you had a pleasant sleep. I just wanted to call you and say how much I love you, and tonight I want to make you feel special. I'm going to take you out to Marty's in the East Village. As sweet as Joaquin sounded, Merisa wasn't really in the mood for it. She had just woken up from her sleep, and she had had a nice dream. That's sweet, Joaquin, but couldn't this wait until later? I wanted to, but I couldn't wait. I have a wonderful surprise for you when you get off work tonight. A surprise? What kind of surprise was he giving her? Mind giving me a hint? The hint will be at Marty's tonight. Of course. Why did she ask? She sighed. Okay. What time? Right when you get off work. Look, let me let you go. The train's coming. I'll see you tonight. I love you. Merisa groaned. Her mind wasn't at all together. Joaquin pressed on. Merisa, I love you. Love. A word thrown around far too loosely, but she responded back to him to get him off her back and maybe get a few more minutes in before fully waking up. Couldn't he fucking call her when she was up, making herself breakfast? Ditto. What's wrong, Merisa? You called me too early. I'm sorry. Look, just meet me at Marty's tonight. I have planned a special night for you and me. Okay, I'll see you tonight. Okay, bye. Merisa hung up the phone and set it back on the nightstand. She looked at the time and noticed it was 6:35. She needed to be at work around 9, and the longer she stayed in bed, the more time she was wasting. In a way, she really hated her job. Being an executive assistant at Westminster Capital, but the job paid really well. Fuck, she said to herself as she accepted that she had to get up and go to work. She knew she had a long day ahead of her. First, her 8 hours at work with a boss from hell, Alora Cavanelli, and then she'd have to meet up with Joaquin after work. She was really curious why he was excited to take her out. She could only hope her day would go quickly. Chapter 1, The Morning Rush. Merisa always began her day by making herself coffee while she had the water running in the bathroom to take a shower. Even though she didn't have to be at work until 9, the train ride from her Brooklyn apartment to her office in Manhattan was definitely a hustle and bustle. She had been working for Westminster Capital for a little over a year as Alora Cavanelli's executive assistant. Her boss was the CFO of the company, and while she was busy dealing with some serious clients, Merisa would handle all of her calls, organize her schedule with her clients, and prepare for meetings that were held every Friday. She was due to come to work a half hour early to set up for Friday's meeting. Her boss was scheduled to have a conference with some shareholders, and even though she had stayed late last night to prepare documents for the boardroom, Merisa needed to be there early to stock it with food, water, and coffee. She wasted no time getting in the shower. The dream she had was really hot. The idea of being surrounded by a bunch of naked men who wanted to fuck her completely turned her on. Yet Merisa couldn't make sense of Adela's appearance in it. The two shared a long history, and while the dream was vivid, she couldn't wrap her head around it. But she remembered kissing Adela and the men groping her, which left a delicious ache throbbing in her core. She leaned her arm against the shower wall, dwelling on it. But she had to stay focused and be out of here on time. She needed to finish up showering and go to work. She turned the water off and stepped out of the shower. Merisa grabbed a towel to dry herself off. She then grabbed the second towel to wrap her hair. She wasn't sure how long she was in the shower, but that dream left her in a bit of a daze. Then again, she did stay up late to watch a number of porn clips on her computer, a guilty pleasure for a single woman. No comment. Merisa wiped the fogged mirror in front of her and gazed at her naked self. The wonderful feeling of lots of hands running over her body and the memory of Adela kissing her. Why the hell did she wake up from that dream? She was left so aroused that she wanted to get herself off, but she needed to get herself ready for work. She was both horny and in a rush to get out of here. It was going to be a long day. She removed the towel from her head and pulled the drawer open to take out a blue comb. Merisa combed her dampened hair to begin straightening it out. She needed to get her flat iron out to finish it up and fix her hair into a French twist. Her role as an executive assistant meant she had to look her best, especially if anyone worked directly for the upper echelons of the company. She could only hope that her hair would cooperate today. She couldn't afford to be late for work, not a minute late. Merisa got dressed. She needed to hurry and fix her hair before stepping out of the house. At the same time, her stomach growled. She hated leaving on an empty stomach. She picked out a charcoal gray and white blouse that fitted her womanly frame, along with a black pencil skirt and shoes that suited her work appearance. She hurried to the bathroom to do her hair, which was going to take some time. Her hair was able to work with her as she was able to fix her hair into a French twist. She went into the kitchen to fix herself a cup of coffee. Merisa managed to finish her cup of coffee, and eat a breakfast burrito before heading out the door to catch the subway. She rushed out of her apartment, but not before she checked what she needed to take with her: her phone, her keys, her tablet for when she was on her lunch break, and her office keys. God forbid she forgot them, especially on a Friday when she was required to have refreshments in the boardroom. She headed down the steps of her building and rushed out into the streets to catch the train. It was a good thing she lived a block away from the subway. Merisa lived on Graham Avenue, and she would have to catch the L train from Montrose Avenue station. Her train ride was smooth until she got off at Union Square station. From there, it was hell on the express train. Walking in the express train was like walking into a can of sardines. The people who rode the express trains below Union Square either worked in the civic or financial sector. Either you wore a suit and a tie and worked at an office downtown, or you were a civil servant. Either way, they were all heading out in the same direction. The train began to lighten up as many of the people exited on the platform at Brooklyn Bridge Station. She only had one more stop to go and then a little walk to her workplace. But then she remembered she had to stop at a deli to pick up a couple of things to set up in the conference room. She could only hope the deli clerk wouldn't screw up her order. The last time that happened, Merisa had to make an extra trip down to get the order redone, and her boss wasn't happy at all. The train arrived at Fulton Street Station. Merisa stepped onto the platform and hurried out. She headed over to Michael's Deli. She looked at her watch and saw she was on time. She had at least 45 minutes to get things set up. It was 8:15. Allura wasn't due in until 9. She went over to the counter and placed her order for 2 dozen croissants, all in different flavors from chocolate to plain, or with raspberry. She placed another order of 2 dozen donuts. The croissants were not going to be enough. Alora liked having a variety in her meetings. Despite a busy deli filled with mostly day traders, Marissa was able to get her order out on time and pay at the counter. The clerk handed her the receipt. Marissa tucked the receipt in her purse to hand over to her boss. Alora would reimburse her for the purchase. She only had a block to go, but to get to her office was like walking a gauntlet. She had to cross busy Broadway and walk a block over to Nassau Street to get to her office. Marissa had to carry the dozens of pastries into her office building, swap her badge, ride the elevator up, and make it to her office. All in all, it would take her at least 10 minutes, giving her only 30 minutes to get set up for the meeting. She made it to her building on time, as she expected. Although the elevator was full, she had to fight her way inside. But when she arrived at her office, she noticed something that suddenly startled her. Alora's office. The door was open. She wondered if she was in the building early. Marissa had always made it to her office on time at 8:30 sharp on Fridays, and never before had she ever seen Alora's office ever open. Did she lock up last night? She set down her boxes of donuts on the desk to check and see what was going on. She noticed Alora's belongings on her desk, but Alora wasn't inside. Then, out of nowhere, she heard a woman's voice, startling her. Marissa jumped as she turned around and saw a conservatively dressed woman with blonde hair, blue eyes, and a voluptuous figure. Alora Cavanelli, her boss. "Can I help you?" Alora asked in a repressed manner. She had a stern look on her face, clearly wondering why she was in her office. Marissa placed her hands over her chest. She'd really scared her white. "Oh, I'm sorry. It's just you're early," Alora responded. "And you have a conference room to set up, don't you?" Marissa nodded. She didn't say anything as she scooted past her, not wasting another second. Marissa took off her jacket and set it over her chair behind the oak counter desk. She carried the donuts in the conference room, which was down the hall. The conference room was neatly set up as she had left it last night. Marissa spent an extra hour after her shift to get the conference room set up and set up Alora's daily planner for the day. She had worked long, hard hours to become the best executive assistant possible. So far, she had survived Alora's wrath. The previous assistant wasn't at all good. She kept screwing things up, and she was late coming to work. Alora had let her go and hired Merisa despite her lack of skills, but Merisa was prompt and a fast learner. Only once had she ever been called to the office to get a lecture on how Alora wanted the job done. A coworker had given Merisa some advice when she started. If you're not called to the office, that meant you were doing a good job. She could only hope would keep it that way, but so far her job was becoming more stressful and miserable. She didn't like dressing conservatively over for work, having to be all professional and all, but it was the only job she could find that paid really well. She was able to afford a place of her own, and as much as Marissa hated the monotony of her 9 to 5 job, sometimes a 9 to 6, she needed it. She began setting up the conference room with refreshments. Marissa went into a wooden series of cupboards designed to camouflage the refrigerator and storage space behind to pull out 2 packs of mineral water. She set it on each end of the conference table next to the black folder that had pencil and pen stacked together accordingly. She looked at her watch and noticed she had only 15 minutes to hurry and start her shift. Marissa didn't waste a second as she returned to the cupboard and took out a set of crystal cups, where she set them next to the bottles of water. By the time she was done, she only had 10 minutes to spare. She closed the cupboard when she heard a knock on the door. Marissa looked over and saw a tall gentleman, bald and good-looking. He had a large build, like he worked out or something, and the expensive suit he was wearing was very attractive. He stood out like a middle-aged model on a men's magazine, but Marissa knew who he was. Christian Cavanelli, her boss's husband. He didn't work on the same floor, but just several floors down for a different company. He spoke with a rich, husky voice. Hi, have you seen Alora? She should be in her office. I didn't see her inside. I was wondering if she was here. Merisa shook her head. No, she wasn't. Then he asked, How are you? I'm okay, Merisa responded, although she didn't have much time to talk as she wanted to look around and make sure she had everything set up for the meeting. Just getting things set up. I can see that, he said. How's my wife treating you? I was saving one of the good ones. Pretty good, Mr. Cavanelli. Please, call me Chris. You don't have to be so formal. Alora appeared in the conference room. Chris, what are you doing here? I dropped by to leave you this. Chris handed Alora a small envelope. I have it all taken care of. Really? Then she looked over at Merisa and asked, Are you finished? Yes, Merisa knew that what Alora meant. This was a private conversation between her and her husband, and she didn't want to get in the middle of it. She'll slip past them out of the door. If you'll excuse me. It's good seeing you, Merisa. Merisa didn't respond back. She hurried down the hall to her desk and sat down and got herself situated. Alora's husband, Chris, was nice to her. He was friendly and cute, the kind of man she would have a sexual fantasy of over and over again, but Merisa didn't want to give Alora the wrong impression. They had shared a few brief conversations, but Merisa tried to remain cordial whenever he greeted her. A few minutes later, Alora passed by her desk. She stopped and turned toward her, shooting a look. Merisa had seen that look before, the kind of look that was both suspicious and a clear warning for talking to her husband. The funny thing was that Christian came to her. She didn't go to him, and it wasn't worth explaining herself. In fact, she never wanted to have that conversation. Merisa took a short but deep breath and held up her posture in her seat, sitting very prominently as she waited for Alora to say something. The meeting is in an hour, and I will need you to order lunch at Marucci's. She folded her arms in front of her. We will be having lunch at 12:30. Yes, Mrs. Cavanelli, Merisa added. Alora walked away. Merisa knew Alora was upset. It wasn't her fault, and the situation wasn't avoidable when her husband approached her, but her demeanor indicated she was going to make her day a bit more miserable. What do y'all think so far? Anybody using their toys yet? Hey, Jackie, do you need to borrow anything? I mean, I've got plenty here if you need one. Just offering. Chapter 2, just another day at the office. The Friday's meeting in the conference room went on as usual. Alora spent a few hours in the boardroom discussing the future of the company with shareholders. Merisa remained in the boardroom with a steno pad, concentrating on words she could get right. All the investors droned on in response to what Alora had to say. Even though she was the chief financial officer of Westminster Capital and not the CEO, Alora spoke with a certain authority that had everyone listening, even the CEO, Ron Ellison, an older man in his 60s wearing an expensive suit and tie, sat at the very end of the conference room listening attentively to what she had to say. Alora knew what she was doing, and she had helped the company survive the tough times, especially after the economic crisis in 2008, by changing the strategy of how they did business with customers while helping the company profit. She was the star of the show, and that's why she was promoted to CFO a few years ago. This pink toy, it's a double one. This end works and this end works. Yeah. Amazon. I want to say it was like $35 maybe. Let's see. Marissa's mind began to wander to the dream she had earlier that morning. She couldn't shake off the erotic dream she had. She dreamed that she was sitting on top of the oak wood conference table with a bunch of horny men in their suits and ties, only they were more attractive than the men in the conference room, groping and fondling her, ready to fuck her. Then Adela walked into the room in her sexy black power suit, seducing her. She imagined herself being laid on the table with her clothes being stripped off, and the men that surrounded her as they took off their clothes while Adela pressed herself on top of Marissa to kiss her. She imagined the kiss being very erotic and her hand wandering inside her pencil skirt to push aside her panties. Her fantasy continued when she saw the sexy men in their expensive suits and ties take off their pants and hold their cocks in their hands, anxiously begging for her and Adela to take them in their mouths. She then imagined Adela speaking to her. You know, board meetings aren't meant for very boring people. Adela trailed her kisses down her neck while Marissa took a cock in her mouth, licking the underside of that man's shaft. She had felt her blouse being opened and then her bra pulled below her breast, allowing them to fall free. Marissa let out a gasp of pleasure when she felt Adela's licks and kisses over her breast. Which one you want, Victoria? Just you like the pink one, that's right. Go get you one, sister. Remind me, message me and I'll send you the link. She felt the wonderful ache in her core, savoring the feeling of being groped, fondled, kissed, and licked. She was wet. Her body relished the wonderful fantasy until Ms. Lopez, are you all right? Allura called her. Marissa quickly snapped out of her fantasy, realizing that she was slumped on her chair with her head leaned back. She turned to her. She wasn't sure how long she had been fantasizing, but when she realized all eyes were on her, Marissa's face flushed red. She looked over to Allura, embarrassed when she noticed a not so pleased look. Merisa straightened herself on her seat and responded, Yes, Mrs. Cavanelli, I'm sorry. She then placed her two fingers between her eyes, rubbing the top of her nose. It's just that I have a terrible headache. Then someone in the boardroom commented, Some headache. There was a little laughter, leaving Marissa feeling embarrassed. Did they know that she was having an erotic fantasy? The end of her day at work arrived, and Marissa was relieved. She was anxious to get out of work, but she had to stay a little after her shift to type up the minutes from the meeting and schedule for Allura's future appointments. It was a good thing she typed at lightning speed. Otherwise, she'd have stayed all night to finish, even if it meant Allura leaving first. She heard her phone buzz quietly, silently on her desk. Marissa wanted to check, but she couldn't because she was busy finishing up her work. She wanted to get out of there, and she couldn't look at her phone. Plus, oh, is that how you do that? You just don't look at it? Well, Nina, remind me. If you don't hear from me from now on, I'm not looking at my phone. Plus, Allura was still in the building. If there was anything she didn't like was anyone on their phone during company time. She ran a very tight department, and if she called anyone on their phone, there would be hell to pay. Her phone kept buzzing. Marissa assumed it was Joaquin either calling her or texting her to see if she was coming. She continued to ignore it. She was focused on getting done and out of here. But Marissa couldn't get her work done with the phone ringing next to her. Marissa looked at the caller ID announcing that Allura Cavanelli was calling. Marissa froze. It was rare that she would call her line. She knew her boss really well. She could feel her nerves jumping with the worry of what she was calling for, but she better answer it. She picked up the phone and placed the handset to her ear, answering professionally. This is Marissa. Marissa, I want you in my office. Shit. She already knew she was in trouble. Right away, she hung up and locked her computer screen. Marissa could only assume why she was being called in the office and what she was in trouble for. She wasn't very responsive during the meeting, and she was ready to get her head chewed off by Allura. In her time working there, Merisa had only been called to the office once for not having Alora's lunch delivered on time. She was a woman who demanded 100% from her executive assistant, nothing less. If that person couldn't deliver 100%, then they were useless to her. She knew Alora was going to give her a lecture over what happened in the meeting. She couldn't explain why, but her only excuse was she had a headache, yet Alora wasn't interested in hearing what she had to say. She stopped in front of her office. Marissa felt herself becoming nervous when she looked in and saw Laura on the computer. She looked back at her for a split second and said, "Come in, close the door, and sit down." Immediately, she felt the uncomfortable silence in the room. Marissa knew very well she was in deep shit. She entered Alora's office and closed the door behind her. She sat motionless as she waited for Alora to finish looking on her computer monitor. She could feel the heat flow on her face as she was ready for Alora to lay into her. "Ms. Lopez, do you know why I hired you?" Alora looked at her intensely. Marissa didn't reply. She knew why she hired her. "Would you like to explain to me why I had to interrupt the meeting to get your attention?" Alora's eyes never left hers, and Marissa was beginning to feel strange. She wasn't sure whether to answer or not, but this wasn't a good time to give her a reason or an excuse why. She had already told her during the conference that she had a bad headache. She continued, "Miss Lopez, I expect you to give me 100%. There seems to be something lacking here, and if you're unable to handle the responsibilities I've given you, then perhaps I should find someone that's able to fulfill them for me. Do I make myself clear?" Marissa kept a calm demeanor when she responded back with a nod. "Yes, Mrs. Cavanelli." "Good. I do hope this won't be a problem. Now, have you emailed me my schedule for next week? I would like to leave." Marissa rose from her seat and walked to the door. "I will send it now." She headed out of the office, relieved that the astrum was only a few minutes, but it was the longest few minutes of her life. She had heard many rumors of Alora firing people for lesser things, and she was relieved to be spared for losing her job. She was a tough boss to work for. Chapter 3, The Question. Ba-ba-ba-bum. Marissa was so relieved to get out of work. She emailed Alora her scheduled meetings and the notes on today. She couldn't wait to be out of the building. Every day at work was a tough day for her, and since it was Friday, a 3-day weekend no less, the first thing on her mind was to get drunk. Since she wasn't able to look at her phone at work, Marissa was finally able to check her messages. While she rode the elevator down to the lobby floor, she noticed a few messages and a missed call from Joaquin. The last message from him seemed a bit irate when he asked why she wasn't answering her text. She didn't have much of a signal in the elevator. She'd get back to him. Marissa also received a message from her best friend, Gala Rodriguez. She and Gala went way back when they worked together at the record store, Tower Records, in East Village before they went out of business years ago. Merisa was the assistant manager at the time, and Gala worked in accounting. The two had a great time together, working together, and after the record store went out of business, the two stayed in contact. She read this message from the Gala. She wanted to hang out tonight. She was free for the weekend and was able to send her kids to stay with her sister in Long Island. It wasn't often that Marissa could hang out with Gala. She was busy being a mom, and since she worked in downtown Brooklyn as a correspondence clerk, they weren't always able to get together. But since her kids were away in Long Island, she knew that Gala was having cabin fever and looking forward to having a night out. It had been a few months since they hung out, but Marissa responded back in her text that she was having dinner with Joaquin and hoped to meet up with her tomorrow. Gala understood, but she indicated in her text how disappointed she was. She was looking forward to meeting tonight. She was supposed to meet Joaquin at Marty's, a bar and grill in East Village. It was where they went for their first date before going to the movies. Instead of wasting money to ride the subway over to Astor Place, she decided to take the bus. She arrived at the restaurant. It didn't have much signage except on the door. It was a great place to dine. They didn't have any fancy food, but Marissa liked the selection of foods she recalled on the menu. Her favorite was the seafood platter, fresh and tasty. When she entered, the place was already crowded. She was greeted by the hostess holding the menu, where she told her it was going to take a while to be seated. But Marissa pointed out the table where Joaquin seated, alone, wearing a sports jacket and a pair of jeans. Joaquin had dark hair and was clean cut. He had boyish features that made it hard to believe that he was only 30, and he was both charming and romantic, too romantic for her taste. Joaquin was more predictable than a tarot card. He lacked spontaneity in the relationship where she could be persuaded to do things at a moment's notice. She had only been seeing him for 6 months, and she'd met him through her mother at a school fundraising event. He stood up from his chair, holding a small rose in his hand. Marissa grinned when he approached her with the rose. Hello, beautiful. How are you? Marissa took the rose as Joaquin kissed her lips. I'm fine, Marissa smiled. She took the rose from his hand. Thank you. You're very sweet. You make me feel sweet. He held out his hand, offering her to sit. Please, have a seat. Marissa took off her jacket and sat down on her chair. Joaquin took his seat, and a young female server came up to take their order. Bring over a corbel and 2 champagne glasses, please, Joaquin requested. The young server nodded as she scooted away. Sure thing, sir. Marissa was intrigued with Joaquin's order. A bottle of champagne and a rose? What was the special occasion? Did he get a promotion or hit the lottery? Joaquin would take her to trendy places like these, but she knew this man would complain about the prices for any food or drinks, even the portion. Something was up, and she noticed his demeanor was happier than ever before. A bottle of champagne? Marissa looked back at him suspiciously. Joaquin, are you okay? I've never seen you act so happy. Joaquin took a sip of water and set it down on the table. He grinned proudly. Marissa, you make me happy. Don't you remember? It's our 6-month anniversary. Tomorrow will mark 6 months since we first met, and I've never felt happier than I am with you. Marissa was taken aback by his memory. Most men wouldn't go to such lengths to celebrate their 6th month. There had to be something more. I'm flattered. Marissa tried to look amazed. The young server came back with a bottle of champagne and 2 glasses. She brought along another person to help carry a metal bucket of ice held in a metal stand. Marissa felt her heart beating fast as she worried where this was going. The young server popped the bottle of champagne and poured it in the 2 glasses. She set the champagne in the ice bucket and walked away. Joaquin picked up his glass of champagne and held it up. You know, I never thought I would meet someone like you. So I just want to say thank you for making my life better. The reason why I brought you here was to ask you this one simple question. Marissa froze. She was fearful of what was coming next. He was going to put her on the spot and pop the question in front of a number of people. Joaquin set down his glass and attempted to slide off his chair, but Marissa tried to stop him. Wait, Joaquin, what are you doing? She shook her head quickly and whispered back to him, Not here, please. What? Marissa, please, I must do this. He got down on his knees, immediately causing a scene. The restaurant grew silent when he held out her hand and asked, Merisa Lopez, I love you with all my heart. You are my world, and I want to ask you, will you marry me? Marissa sat there, frozen. She was now put in the spotlight as she looked around nervously. Normally, another woman would burst into tears of joy and say yes, but this was all too much for her to digest. She wasn't into scenes, and now she had only a split second to think about committing into something she wasn't ready to do. Marriage, it was a big step. She had only dated this guy for 6 months, and now Joaquin wanted to ask her hand in marriage. This was definitely too much to take in, and everyone was waiting for her answer to see if she would say yes or no. If Merisa said yes, then everyone would be happy, including Joaquin. But deep down, Merisa would be lying to herself about wanting to be married. If she said no, then she would feel guilty about the effort he put into it, and even worse, about breaking his heart in public, no less. Merisa was now between a rock and a hard place, and what should only take a few seconds to respond to only felt like forever. The pressure was on. Merisa, will you marry me? Joaquin asked again. She should say yes. She didn't want to embarrass him, but her heart was telling her otherwise. There was something about him that was completely missing for her, something she really couldn't explain. Marriage was such a big step, and even more when she didn't feel the same as Joaquin felt. Merisa wasn't that type that liked being pressured into something she wasn't willing to do. And now it was time to be honest, not only to him, but to herself as well. Joaquin, you're a sweet man. She shook her head, sliding off her chair. But no, I'm not ready for marriage. Nothing was uglier than a man given false hope by a woman, especially when his marriage proposal was rejected. The look on his face quickly changed from happiness to shock, the kind of look Merisa wished she didn't have to see. She never meant to break his heart that way, but she needed to be honest with herself about what she wanted, and if she told him yes, would she regret saying yes to something she wasn't willing to go forward with? Joaquin wore a look of disbelief. No, he stammered a question. But, but, but why? I love you, Merisa. Why would you say no? This would be a perfect time for Merisa to teleport somewhere, but it was all too late. The damage was now done. It was time to be honest with him. Joaquin, I'm just not ready for marriage. It's not what I want. Not what you want. After the times we've spent together, after all I've done for you, I had a hotel suite waiting for us, the dinner. I was going to splurge on treating you the most romantic weekend ever. Merisa felt bad about what she'd done, but this wasn't what she wanted. Now she was in the spotlight. Everyone was looking at her. She shook her head softly. I'm sorry, Joaquin. This isn't what I want. She couldn't bear any more of this. She could see how upset Joaquin was. Merisa slid out of her chair, picked up her jacket, and walked out of the restaurant. The damage was already done. All she could think about was leaving the restaurant, but when she got out the door, she didn't expect Joaquin to follow her and grab her by the arm. Wait, Merisa, I just need to know. Joaquin looked confused as he faced Merisa. He was determined, and he wasn't going to let her go without a real answer. Why did you embarrass me back there? Are you seeing someone? Merisa was taken aback by his sudden accusation. It was bad enough that she turned down his proposal, and she was very honest why, but Joaquin was suddenly suspicious about her. She had been nothing but faithful to him, and his attitude was about to set her off. Are you fucking kidding me? Because I say I don't want to marry you, you just assume that I'm fucking around? Joaquin shouted. Well, are you? Merisa shouted back. She didn't give a fuck who overheard them. No, I'm not. Then why won't you marry me? Don't you love me? He had to ask that question again, didn't he? First, he put her in the spotlight in front of many people, eating and laughing. And now he was going to trap her with $1 million question. What she really wanted was something Joaquin couldn't give her, something different than what he expected. It was now too late to turn back, and she felt it was best to be honest with him. She was damned by whatever decision she was made. Joaquin, it's not what I want. I'm not ready for this marriage thing. What gave you the notion that's what I wanted? Every woman wants to be married. He held out his hand. You and I mean, things were going so well. Why haven't you haven't even answered my question. Do you love me? Merisa was stymied. She didn't want to answer, but since he pushed her, she might as well. If it means I have to marry you, then no. She shook her head without hesitation. I don't. Joaquin didn't take her rejection really well, nor did he take Marisa's honesty well. He shook his head, ready to lay down the guilt trip. I don't believe you. After all I've done for you, you turned down my proposal, he scoffed. My mother was right about you. You're probably some no-good whore. Whore? Who the fuck does he think he is? A saint? Because he didn't like her honest answer, Joaquin resorted to name-calling out of spite because she didn't want to marry him. That fucking asshole and his mother was a piece of shit. She was glad to not have said yes. His mother was a church-going, Bible-thumping, judgmental bitch who thought her shit didn't stink. His mother never approved of her, and the two didn't get along well. But the way he emphasized the word bothered her. She wasn't going to let him get the last word in, and she was ready to give as good as she got. Oh, I'm a whore because I refused to marry you? She held up her hands, indicating she'd had enough. It was time to take him down a peg. You know, since you want to go there and act so childish, I'm so glad I said no to your proposal. You've shown me what kind of man you are. And another thing, I never liked your mother. She was nothing more than some judgmental bitch. Then, out of nowhere, Joaquin backhanded her across her face. She knew she had hit a nerve, but what he had done was very brazen in public. Merisa was stunned that he hit her across the face. Not only was he childish, but he had a temper she was now able to see, a realization of who he really was. Who knew what else he was capable of doing to her if she said yes to him? You fucking hit me, Merisa reacted. Joaquin suddenly came to his senses, covering his mouth with his hand. I'm so sorry, Merisa. I don't know what came over. Merisa was furious, and without hesitation, she punched Joaquin dead in the face, knocking him on his ass. Merisa grew up with a younger brother, and never in her life had she ever allowed her younger brother to lay his hand on her and get away with it. And she would be damned if she'd let any man hit her. I don't give a fuck who you are. You don't fucking put your hands on me, you piece of shit. Joaquin held onto his face in complete shock. He wasn't expecting Merisa to have such balls of steel to stand up to him. She really showed him where his place was. Joaquin pleaded, Merisa, I'm sorry. I'm very sorry. Fuck you. It's definitely over. She was so heated, she wished she could go ahead and beat the shit out of him, make him suffer for what he had done to her. No man had ever laid a hand on her, not even her younger brother, and the two had argued many times. If only her brother was here with her right now. He was very protective of her, despite their differences, and in a way, she would have loved to have him around to kick Joaquin's ass. Oh, look at that time. It's 8:59 and I'm on chapter 4. Shucks, y'all. Guess what? You got to go buy the book and read it. It is free on KU and 99 cents. Am I right? I hope I just didn't on Amazon. Bada boom, bada bang. I know I am, and you love me for it, Miss Vincy. Y'all, this is like the world's largest vibrator. I never use it because it's so freaking huge. Oh, fuck, it just came on. And I actually have two of them. I bought one, and my boyfriend didn't know I had it because I didn't like it. And because I ordered it off Amazon. And then he came in one day because he likes to surprise me with vibrators. He came in one day with one just like it. I said, I already have one. Yes, 99 cents or free on KU. Just buy it. Just be done with it and buy it. Just be done with it. And 453 pages, so it'll take you a little bit, a day or two to read it, and probably take me about 3 weeks to read it. So there you go. What y'all think? Y'all like it? Oh, you're more than welcome, Ray. More than welcome. By the way, that's a good name. That's my daddy's name. So, tomorrow night is Miss Pebbles, and I will be reading Running with Charlie, I think is what it's called. I will be reading the whole story tomorrow night. So if you guys want to hear one of Pebbles' her whole stories, you need to show up. And these are definitely going to be needed because it's Pebbles. Come on. That's what she does. So, and anything else I'm missing, girls? Boys? Oh, I have a small version of this too. It's about that big. And it's like not quite that big. Yeah, this sucker's huge. And it's hard to. I don't know how many speeds it's got, but it goes on forever. All righty. Oh, yeah. Come on tomorrow night. Miss Pebbles will get you all wound up. She's good. So, all right, everybody. That's it for tonight. As you can tell, my throat's getting dry. So, and I guess that's it. So, everybody have a good evening, and I hope you all have sweet dreams. All righty. Happy reading.